Chapter 1, The Thread That Is Born Before Time. Smell the damp earth after the first rain in the desert. Hear the whisper of the wind between the canyons, as if telling a secret too ancient to be spoken aloud. See, in the twilight of the first world, a small, bent figure, weaving something invisible with her fingers, not wool, not linen, but thought. She is Kokyangwuti, spider grandmother, the primordial grandmother whose body is made of cosmic web, whose heart beats to the rhythm of the earth's cycles, and whose eyes saw the beginning and the end before time existed. In the oral traditions of the Hopi, the ancestral people of the red lands of the southwestern United States, she was not created, but emerged from the very thought of the creator, Tawa, as a partner in creation. While Tawa shaped the sun and the stars, Kokyangwuti wove consciousness, the finest and strongest thread of all. Her gift is not dominion over nature, but the art of connecting. Each thread she weaves connects human to plant, plant to river, river to mountain, mountain to dream. She doesn't command, she teaches. In the first world, the first humans were bright, but scattered sparks, fighting over shade, accusing each other of stealing the air, ignoring that life is a circle, not a straight line. When discord rotted that world, it was Kokyangwuti who, with her talking stick and voice as soft as a spiderweb at dawn, guided them down, through an opening in the earth, towards the second world. She didn't judge them. She only asked, "What have you learned?" But humans rarely learn the first time, and so they continued, world after world, in cycles of pride, collapse, and redemption. Now, in the fifth world, ours, spider grandmother no longer guides them by the hand. She gave them stories. And, for the Hopi, stories are maps of the soul. The danger, however, is ancient. When the stories are forgotten, the web unravels. While a child in the desert asks why the spider doesn't fear solitude, and the grandmother replies that it's because everything is connected, the modern world screams, rushes, erases memories. And if the web breaks completely, who will rebuild the paths between the worlds? Kokyangwuti listens, but hopes that someone, besides whispering her name, will remember how to weave. Chapter 2, The Descent Through the Worlds. Feel the humid heat of the first world, a place of shadows and confused voices, where the first humans moved like frightened insects, unaware that they shared the same air. When discord poisoned that world with greed and disrespect for the circle of life, the earth trembled not with anger, but with weariness. It was then that Kokyangwuti, the spider grandmother, raised her talking staff and led those who still had ears to hear toward the second world. There, they learned to live in groups, but confused unity with conformity, silencing dissenting voices until harmony became imprisonment. Faced with fear disguised as order, the earth wept, and Kokyangwuti guided them down once more, reminding them, truth has no owner. Whoever imprisons it, kills it. In the third world, humans discovered the power of rituals and sacred words, but soon distorted the sacred into an instrument of personal power. Priests demanded offerings, shamans sold visions, leaders spoke for the spirits without listening to them. It was there that spider grandmother wept for the first time, not for evil, but for misunderstood good. In the fourth world, they almost achieved balance. They planted with respect, they sang with humility. But the arrival of the Koyaanisqatsi, those who live in imbalance, brought destructive fire, divisive words, and doubt. Have we been abandoned? In response, Kokyangwuti visited Talasi, the morning star, in a dream and guided the most attentive, not the strongest, to the opening of the fifth world, handing them a thread cut from her own web. One day, when the world runs too fast, you will need to know how to stop. Today, this thread lives on in ceremonies, in stories, in ephemeral sand drawings, a symbol of a memory that few still honor. The fifth world is not the end of the journey, but the final test. Here, no one guides the steps anymore. Only the stories, the memory, and the web that endures remain, if there are still those who recognize it. And now, in the Arizona desert, a young man named Lome abandons his village, tired of the old stories, seeking answers in cities and on bright screens. But in his dreams, a spider silently weaves a path back, and whispers, "You are not lost. You are only forgotten." Chapter 3, The Unseen Web, Yet Sustaining. Feel the dry wind of the Hopi Plateau, carrying grains of sand that whisper ancient names. Hear the sound of a loom being prepared at dawn, not with cotton threads, but with intention. See the wrinkled hands of an elder intertwining red and black threads, while she sings, "Kokyangwuti, weave with us today." For the Hopi, nothing is done in vain. Planting corn is prayer, weaving is meditation, storytelling is a sacred act. Spider grandmother does not inhabit temples, but the space in between thought and action, between dream and awakening, between the said and the lived. Her body is not of flesh, but of relationship. Each thread of her web is a bond between mother and child, between rain and seed, between past and future. Therefore, every ceremony begins with a silent question: am I weaving with wisdom, or just in haste? In the city, Lome, the young man who left in search of answers, lives amidst concrete and bright screens, but his dreams call him back to the canyons and his grandmother's voice: you carry the thread. Don't lose it. Restless, he consumes books and videos on spirituality, but nothing fills the void. Because Kokyangwuti doesn't reveal itself to those who merely observe, it reveals itself to those who practice. Back in the village, his grandmother Kacha doesn't judge him. She hands him a ball of raw yarn and says, weave something. Faced with the response, I don't know how to weave, she teaches him the first lesson: then learn to stop first. The web begins in silence. Under the shade of a pinyon pine, Lome sits doing nothing, just breathing, just listening, just being. And it is in that moment that he feels the wind bring an invisible thread, and something within him responds. Kokyangwuti doesn't demand perfection. It demands presence. In ancient times, shamans sought her in fasting and dreams, and she appeared with questions, never with orders. What are you feeding? Does your thread sustain, or imprison? She is the guardian of the creative feminine, nurturing, not controlling, and teaches that creating is trusting the movement of life, like the spider that weaves and releases. But an ancient warning echoes: when humans weave only for themselves, the web dries up. And the wind carries it away. Today, the wind blows strongly, stories are shortened, rituals become spectacles, children doubt the value of what is told. Kacha responds while Lome ties his first crooked knot: if we stop telling stories, the world will forget that it is connected. And what is not connected, collapses. The test approaches. Lome will be invited to take the village's knowledge to the world, or keep it only for his own people. And Kokyangwuti observes, knowing that even the best intentions can weave a trap, if not guided by humility. Chapter 4, The Spider's Dream in the Heart of the City. Smell the hot concrete and car oil, so far removed from the damp desert earth. Hear the incessant hum of screens, notifications, and competing voices that don't listen to each other. See Lome, in his rumpled suit, standing in the middle of a crowd walking too fast to notice the sky. He's back in the city, but something has changed. Now, he sees crossroads at every intersection, reflections of old questions in shop windows, poorly woven webs on electrical wires, all vibrating with the weight of what has been silenced. Spider Grandmother hasn't abandoned him, she's entered the glass and steel jungle with him. On the third night he dreams of a spider weaving between concrete towers. He wakes with a clear certainty: he can't keep the knowledge to himself, but he can't sell it either. An enthusiastic documentary filmmaker emerges with a seductive proposal: fame, money, a global platform to reveal the Hopi mysteries. Lome, however, remembers his grandmother's words: Kokyangwuti doesn't weave to be admired. She weaves to sustain. He understands that certain truths don't survive outside their time, their silence, their circle fire. He refuses the offer, not arrogantly, but reverently. Instead, he invites the man to the village not to film, but to sit, listen to the wind, learn that some truths are only born after much silence. The documentarian laughs, disconcerted: that won't get an audience. Lome calmly replies, then perhaps the world isn't ready. And that's okay. But Kokyangwuti knows that time is running out. Outside the village, minds advance on sacred mountains, waters are diverted, children forget the names of plants. If the guardians of balance don't find a way to speak without betraying, the fifth world risks being the last. So, the next time Lome dreams, he finds Spider Grandmother not weaving, but waiting, her 8 eyes fixed on his with a silent question: are you willing to be the thread that connects, without breaking? And this time, Lome knows the answer isn't in words. It's in the next step, the one that unites the old world with the new, without losing respect, without breaking, simply weaving. Chapter 5, The Golden Thread Between Two Worlds. Feel the weight of the silence in the documentary filmmaker's office, not an emptiness, but a space filled with unspoken choices. Listen to the ticking of a clock marking minutes, while outside, in the desert, time flows in cycles of moon and rain. Watch Lome close the folder with proposals, contracts, and plans for global dissemination, and return it, intact. Don't you want to save your culture? Asks the filmmaker, perplexed. I want to honor it, replies Lome. There's a difference. And therein lies the most delicate lesson of Spider Grandmother: not every good intention creates a good web. Back in the village, he shares everything with Kacha, who listens silently by the fire. He wants to show our web, says Lome, but he doesn't know that a web exposed to strong winds unravels. Kacha smiles slightly and hands him a leather bag containing sacred seeds and an almost invisible golden thread, the middle thread, neither hidden nor exposed, reserved for those who seek with an open heart, not with a camera on. In the following days, Lome teaches the village children not only stories, but the art of listening, how to sit in silence, how to plant with gratitude, how to respect the thread before pulling it. But the outside world moves on. A mining company announces plans to extract uranium near a sacred mountain, the place where, according to tradition, Kokyangwuti wove the first path between the worlds. The elders discuss between struggle, prayer, and resignation. Lome, however, feels something different: clarity. In a dream, he sees Spider Grandmother not as a grandmother or a spider, but as a cosmic web stretched across the earth, vibrating with every violation. She doesn't speak, she only extends a thin, but firm, leg toward him. Upon waking, Lome writes a letter to the mining company, not with laws or statistics, but with a direct appeal to the heart: you are about to cut a thread that sustains not only our people, but the balance of the world. Come first. Sit down. Listen. And then decide if you still want to dig. He signs it as Lome, grandson of the web. But Kokyangwuti knows that the true test is not in the company's response. It is in Lome. Because teaching the world to respect the web, without distorting it, without selling it, without breaking it, is the greatest risk a guardian can take. And it is also the most faithful act of love for creation. Chapter 6, The Letter That Doesn't Ask, But Invites. Smell the handmade paper, made with yucca fibers and dyed with pine bark, not white, but the color of earth after the rain. Hear the creak of the reed pen as it touches the paper, as if each word were a root burying itself. Watch Lome seal the letter with red wax, marked with the symbol of a simple web, 8 lines converging on a silent center. He doesn't send it by email or post it on social media. He delivers it personally to the mining company representative who came to the village to negotiate land use rights. The man, in a suit and polished shoes, holds the letter hesitantly. Is this poetry? It's an invitation, Lome replies. That night, under a sky so starry it seemed woven, the executive read the words not as an argument, but as a call. Before digging, ask the mountain. Before deciding, ask yourselves, what am I feeding with this choice? He laughs, disconcerted, but keeps the letter. Days later, he surprises everyone by returning to the village alone, without security, carrying a basket of bread and fruit, an ancient gesture of peace, even if unconscious. I want to understand, he says. Thus begins the time of the slow thread. Kacha receives him not as an enemy, but as someone who has forgotten. He teaches him to sit in silence, to observe the corn growing in a spiral, to see the spider choose its place with the wisdom of the wind. Lome observes in silence, knowing that Kokyangwuti is there, not as a miracle, but as patience. Because the web does not impose itself, it attracts. In the following weeks, Daniel, as everyone now calls him, returns always. He learns that sacred is not an adjective, but a relationship. The mountain is not a resource, it is ancestral. When the mining company's board pressures him, he replies, perhaps I'm wasting my time, but I'm gaining something I didn't know I had lost. At the spring planting ceremony, Daniel buries a seed with his bare hands, and cries, not from sadness, but from remembrance. He writes to the company recommending they suspend the plans, not out of fear of protests, but because there are things that cannot be measured, and yet, they sustain everything. Kokyangwuti knows that the true victory lies not in the mining company's decision, but in the fact that a heart remembered. Still, the fifth world remains unbalanced. In another region, a sacred river is diverted to fields of genetically modified cotton. The Hopi voices echo for few. And Lome feels a new calling, no longer as a bridge, but as a weaver. Now he understands, it is not enough to protect the web. It is necessary to teach others to weave their own. To do this, he will have to leave the village again, carrying Kokyangwuti within him, like an invisible but unbreakable thread. Chapter 7, The Weaver Who Went Out to Teach Silence. Feel the weight of Lome's backpack, not filled with books, but with seeds, a small portable loom, and a jar of village soil. Hear his footsteps on the gravel path, now not in flight, but on a silent mission. Watch the sun rise over the canyon, tinging the rocks red, the color of the thread of life, of memory, of continuity. He leaves not as an ambassador or activist, but as a student who has become a teacher. Because Kokyangwuti doesn't teach so that knowledge is kept hidden, but so that it multiplies with respect. His destination is not a city, but a network, community schools, healing centers, groups of young indigenous people from other nations who also resist oblivion. He doesn't talk about Spider Grandmother, he relies on her. In a circle of young Navajo, Apache, and Hopi people in New Mexico, he asks, who here has heard a story that changed their way of walking on Earth? The answers come in whispers, memories of grandparents, dreams of crows, vanished rivers. This is Kokyangwuti, says Lome. It doesn't belong only to the Hopi. It's the force that weaves together all traditions that respect life. But he doesn't reveal sacred songs or closed rituals. He teaches only what can be shared without breaking the web: silence before speaking, gratitude before taking, the courage to say, "I don't know," and wait for the answer to come from the wind. In each place, he leaves a small loom with red and black threads, with a simple instruction: weave something together. Not to show off. To remember that you are connected. Not everyone understands. Some call him romantic, others, a traitor. Even among the Hopi elders, there are those who question whether he is diluting the path. Lome listens, doesn't defend himself, he simply returns to the loom and weaves, slowly, as if each knot were a prayer. In a dream, Kokyangwuti lands on his finger like a tiny spider and asks, "Are you afraid?" "Yes," he replies. "Afraid of making a mistake." "Then you're on the right track," she says. "He who does not fear the thread, does not respect it." Because the real danger is not the modern world, but the illusion that one can control wisdom. Lome learns that teaching is not transferring knowledge, but creating space for it to be born, just as the spider does not force its web, but waits for the right moment. But time is running out. In Washington, a bill threatens sacred lands. In universities, researchers publish analyses of Hopi stories without authorization. Kokyangwuti knows that the fifth world is approaching its point of choice, not with war, but with a question posed to every heart: will you continue to weave, or only to consume? And Lome, before a class of university students, looks at them all calmly and says, "The next story will not be told by me. It will be lived by you." In silence, he hands each one a red thread, not as a symbol, but as a seed. Chapter 8, The Thread That Returns to the Heart of the Web. Feel the cold of the university auditorium, air conditioning instead of wind, plastic instead of earth. Hear the disconcerted silence of the students holding the red threads, unsure whether to keep them, photograph them, or discard them. Watch Lome turn his back and leave, not as a farewell, but as an invitation to what comes next. Because Kokyangwuti doesn't inhabit stages, it inhabits actions. Days later, Maya, a young woman from Los Angeles, with erased ancestry but a restless heart, ties the thread to her wrist. Something changes. She stops running. She begins to walk attentively. She asks where the water she drinks comes from, hesitates before discarding trash, seeks stories not out of curiosity, but as medicine. She doesn't transform into a shaman, nor does she dress in empty symbols. She simply fulfills the first teaching: before weaving, one must stop. When he discovers that his university has accepted funding from a company that deforests the Amazon, lands where other grandmother spiders also weave, he calls others together with questions, not accusations. What are we feeding with our silence? What web are we breaking by pretending that profit has no consequences? Some laugh. Others feel the thread tugging. Back in the Hopi village, Lome feels a tremor in the web, not of danger, but of echo. Kacha, now fragile as a dry leaf, holds his hand and whispers, "You launched the thread, and it found other fingers. Now, the web grows on its own." But all expansion brings risk. There are already shops selling spider grandmother necklaces, made of plastic, YouTubers telling legends without ever having heard the silence of a real web. Kokyangwuti doesn't get angry, he just observes. The authentic web doesn't need defending, it reveals itself to those who are ready. That night, Lome dreams of a cosmic web that unites traditions from all over the world: Hopi, Quechua, Yoruba, Guarani, all weaving the same question in different languages: do you care for what sustains you? Upon waking, he understands that his role has changed. It is no longer to teach, but to witness. Because the fifth world will not be saved by a single savior, but healed by millions of small acts of remembrance. And the time of the great test approaches. The Hopi elders speak of an ancient sign: when the world completely forgets the stories, when there is no one left to ask, "What am I feeding?" Kokyangwuti will withdraw. And the web that sustains the worlds, that made of respect, memory, and relationship, will be undone. And perhaps, this time, there will be no sixth world. Perhaps the thread, once broken, can no longer be reconnected. Therefore, every gesture of attention, every chosen silence, every red thread tied with intention, is an act of sacred resistance, and of hope woven, however thin, against total oblivion. Chapter 9, The Silence Before the Withdrawal. Feel the air grow thicker, as if even the wind were holding its breath. Hear what is no longer heard: the morning songs in the villages, the tales told around the fire, the names of plants whispered with respect. See the cobwebs in the city windows, not as a sign of abandonment, but of sacred absence. The Hopi elders are quiet, not out of resignation, but out of anticipatory mourning. In oral traditions, there is a rarely uttered prophecy: when the young stop asking their grandmothers, when stories are kept in books instead of hearts, and when the world runs so fast that not even the spider can weave. Kokyangwuti will withdraw into the darkness between the worlds. It will not punish, it will only cease to sustain. Because a web does not exist to be admired, but to function. And if no one walks upon it with reverence anymore, it dissolves. Lome feels this dissolution like a pain in his chest, an essential thread unraveling within him. He returns to the village not as a teacher, but as a son seeking the womb before the end. Kacha, now almost silent, whispers in a thin voice, she is tired, even the strongest web breaks if no one repairs it. That night, Lome climbs the sacred mountain with only water and blue corn. He doesn't ask, he doesn't pray, he only waits. And when the moon touches the summit, Kokyangwuti appears as a pure presence, a soft glow, an invisible web in the wind, the scent of wet earth where it hasn't rained. Did you come to say goodbye? She asks. I came to tell you that there are still those who remember, he replies. Remembering is not enough. It is necessary to live, she says, with sadness, not anger. Before leaving, she drops a single golden thread, thinner than an eyelash, stronger than steel, and warns, if held with reverence, the web can be reborn, whether used for fame or oblivion, it will be the end. Descending the mountain, Lome sees something that makes him breathe again. Maya, the young woman from Los Angeles, is in the village, not with a camera, nor with questions, but sitting with the children, teaching them to tie red threads into bracelets, repeating before each knot, for balance, for respect, for memory. Kokyangwuti watches from afar, his 8 eyes gleam. Perhaps there is still time. But the final moment approaches. The whole world is at the same crossroads, to continue tearing the web, or to learn, again, to weave with clean hands. And the fate of the fifth world, perhaps of all worlds, depends not on heroes, but on those who, even amidst the noise, choose to stop, touch the thread, and remember. Chapter 10, The Web That Never Ends. Feel the first ray of equinox sunlight touching the red earth, not as light, but as a renewed promise. Hear the song of a Hopi child teaching another to tie a red thread, saying, "This is to remind us that we are not alone." See, in Los Angeles, in Manaus, in Lagos, in Athens, different hands holding simple threads, not for fashion, but for conscious choice. Kokyangwuti did not leave. She did not gather the web. Because, at the last moment, someone held the thread, not forcefully, but respectfully. In the ceremony of the new cycle, the Hopi elders gather not to lament, but to give thanks. Kacha, fragile as a dry leaf, smiles as she hears the children repeat their stories, not word for word, but spirit for spirit. Lome does not speak. She only weaves, slowly, with hands marked by the desert and by silence. In each knot, she interweaves intention, that the thread reminds whoever touches it that everything is connected, that which does not separate, but heals, that which is passed on not as a trophy, but as a responsibility. Spider Grandmother observes, not as a distant goddess, but as a living presence in the action. Because, in Hopi traditions, the sacred does not dwell in temples, but in gestures repeated with love. She knows that the fifth world is still at risk, the mining companies will return, the screens will continue to shine brighter than the stars, many will still run without knowing why. But now there are threads of resistance, a teacher who teaches how to plant corn with gratitude, a scientist who consults with people before entering their lands, a young man who, upon seeing a spider in the corner of the wall, whispers, "Thank you for weaving yourself." And that is enough. Because Kokyangwuti never promised a perfect world. He promised a possible world, provided there are those who remember that life is a web, not a loose thread. In the final scene of the journey, Lome is back in the city, but his steps are slower, his eyes more open. In his pocket, the golden thread now intertwines with red, blue, black, and white threads, from many hands, traditions, and hearts that chose not to forget. He stops at a busy crossroads, takes out the thread, and with a simple gesture, ties it to the signpost, not to mark territory, but to remember, you are connected. Even here. Even now. And somewhere, between the wind and the silence, a spider begins to weave again. This story comes from the oral tradition of the Hopi, an ancestral people of the southwestern United States, whose teachings are passed down with reverence, not in writing, but through gesture, song, and presence. If it touched you, comment, what ancestral lesson do you take from it?